Everybody, thanks for watching and welcome to understanding the real truth about the extraterrestrial phenomena and the mystery of Saturn. So this is part one, and I want to thank you guys as always for purchasing or taking the time to download. We're going to get into a lot of information in this video. I'm at the Hoover Dam actually right now. Everybody knows they have always been talking about UFO phenomena here and over Nevada as well. So wanted to start here and begin the video here and just give you guys a quick introduction to what we're going to be talking about. So we're going to be getting into a lot of stuff that has to do with Mars and Saturn and the moon and just the real history of what we have been told about extraterrestrials and everything like that. So I want to thank you guys again, and let's get into the video. Now, most of the time when it comes to UFO things, the information is not always clear. You know, we see all the home videos and everything like that people put out. It's always something to give us a lot of skepticism about UFOs when we see a lot of these videos. So a lot of people don't take it seriously, and we don't always look into extraterrestrial phenomena because a lot of people just classify it as crazy. But when you go and research a lot of the real details about a lot of UFO sightings around America, around the world, actually, it's a lot of validity to a lot of the stories. Now, one of the problems that I face in doing this is a lot of times when I go to record in places like the Hoover Dam, I'm at Lake Mead actually right now, is you get too many tourists, too many people that be around that, you know, always want to be nosy and want to know what you're doing or what's going on and everything like that. One of the reasons why I got so many subscribers and, you know, that it went up so fast, not just because of people sharing, it's because a lot of places I go to, so many people come up and, you know, they disturb the recording and they ask questions, and I try to point them, you know, to my YouTube channel for more questions, more to answer the questions better on stuff that I do, stuff that I talk about. So, you know, a lot of times I'll be wanting to do videos longer outside, but it's just not possible because so many people is just nosy and they disturb the recording. So what I was saying before about, you know, the issues with so many people not being able to believe the UFO stuff that's going on and all the phenomena that we've seen around the world with the sightings and all the pictures and everything, the videos, is what I do with my research is some things that you can look at that you can use to tell what's true and what's not true. So what I do with my research is, you know, a lot of times when we look at information that we can't tell if it's true or not, I just examine, you know, all the details about that situation, and it's easier to tell what's true or not because, you know, you can say to yourself, why would they do something like this if this is not true? Or why wouldn't they do that if this is true, you know, and vice versa, or not true, or vice versa. So this is how I approach a lot of my research some of the time. Sometimes you can see something that tells you a lot, actually speak louder than words. So it's like, why do you do this, or why hide this, or why put this here if this is not true? This is some of the things we're going to discuss in this film, things that the government do and has done that really alludes to there being a really huge UFO phenomenon. It's not always easy to look at what we read and what we hear about UFOs, about Mars, about the moon and Saturn, and to, you know, honestly take it as actual fact. So, you know, TV is one of the reasons why we can't do that, and it's just a lot of things sound so far-fetched, and we've been dumbed down by TV not to accept things as proof, as fact. So it's easier for us to just really go by the mistakes that the government made and the things that they do that kind of allude to them trying to cover things up. And this is what we're going to really address in this video. So you have to ask yourself questions like, you know, if there wasn't a UFO phenomena, if it wasn't, you know, real true reports of UFO sightings or what have you, why would NASA, why would scientists be spending so much money, billions and billions of dollars on satellites? You know, it costs millions of dollars to keep these satellites working, you know, a year, millions of dollars, and it costs, you know, even more money for them to be built. And it's not so much that it's just America, because you got to remember, we had these satellites, you know, some of them since the 70s. So you got to ask yourself, okay, so we know America and Russia with the satellites and everything like that. If it wasn't, you know, no sightings, you know, we got these antennas listening for radio signals or what have you. If we never found any, if it wasn't any sightings, why do we keep funding it? Why do we keep spending money? And not just that, why have other countries around the world also spent billions of dollars to build satellites and, you know, to listen and to watch space as well? So these are things we got to look at. We got to look at these things and question them as, you know, if not, If there wasn't a UFO phenomenon, if it wasn't an extraterrestrial phenomenon, then why spend billions of dollars to monitor this non-existing phenomenon? Why spend millions of dollars trying to maintain these equipment, these satellites, these antennas to, monitor these so-called non-existent, extraterrestrial phenomena? So these are some of the things you got to really look into and just say, if not, then why? Why do this? And we all know that when a person is trying to cover up something, then, of course they're going to lie. And one of the things we got to look at is NASA has never, they are notoriously known for not telling us the truth. The whole slogan with NASA, never a straight answer. So we can't hardly expect them to give us any truth. So we got to dig deeper and look into the history and the facts surrounding the extraterrestrial phenomena and everything that we have been seeing. So we're going to get into this and a lot more in this video. So we're going to take this series back to my office, to my studio. I'll finish up there. I want to thank you guys again for taking the time to purchase or download and to watch. And we're going to get out of here and go there because it's just too many tourists around here, too many people in the way. So we're going to get into this because this series right here is going to be the series that's really going to take us into the final video of the Saturn Satan series, because there's a lot more things I got to get into with Saturn and quantum physics, a lot more, but we're really going to get into Mars and the moon and Saturn in this video. And then the next video really going to be mostly, part 2 of this, really going to be mostly about Saturn. So we're going to get into this and, let's go. Now, this is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, or SETI for short. This antenna costs millions of dollars to build and millions of dollars a year to maintain. And again, the question you got to ask yourself is, one, why? Why would you in the first place spend millions of dollars to build an antenna to listen to what's in outer space, or to try to record what's going on in outer space, if you have no reason to do so? So millions of dollars to maintain this antenna, which they've been maintaining it for years, and you would think after a certain amount of time that they would shut these things down because it absorbs so much money to maintain it, to keep it going. But yet we have seen more antennas go up around the world, and more new technology geared towards understanding and recording and maintaining machines and devices and all kinds of things that's going to record space and record, the possible existence of extraterrestrial life or what have you. So you would think, why spend all this time and money on something that you are not 100% sure is true, or that you don't have any kind of inkling, or any kind of anything that will help you justify spending this kind of time and money on something like this. Now, when we read about SETI, it says here, when it comes to the search for intelligent extraterrestrial life throughout the universe, we've already been sitting quietly and using the search for extraterrestrial intelligence SETI initiative to listen to spikes in radioactive activity throughout our universe that could be coming from sources of intelligent life. And it says down here, SETI has already managed to discover some faint signals, but scientists aren't so sure they're coming from aliens. In fact, lots of interference from the Earth itself or from other sources in space could be, I'm going to say that again, from other sources in space could be clouding our understanding of what looks like an alien's attempt to communicate. Now just think about what it could possibly mean by other sources in space. Now this is the Allen Telescope Array. This is something that SETI has spent money to have built, and to also try to get information about, extraterrestrials and UFOs. This is another satellite or another antenna that costs millions of dollars to maintain and build. They're supposed to have built like 47 of them, and there's supposed to be a huge array of these antennas that was supposed to be spread for miles. But supposedly they had an idea that they was going to use them for, and there was some funding issues, and supposedly they shut down most of these antennas. But again, just like with the SETI antennas, it's talking about here. It says SETI Institute Center for SETI Research, CSR for short, uses ATA, which is the Allen Telescope Array, in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, observing 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, from 2007 to 2015. ATA has identified hundreds of millions of technological signals. Say that again. ATA has identified hundreds of millions of technological signals so far. All these signals have been assigned the status of noise or radio frequency interference because A, they appear to be generated by satellites or Earth-based transmitters, or B, they disappear before the threshold time limit of 1 hour, which means they had to basically hold on to the signal for an hour before they can completely confirm what it is. Researchers and CSR are presently working on ways to reduce the threshold time limit and to expand ATA's capabilities for direction of signals that may have embedded messages. So now, you got to understand what it's saying here. One, it's talking about how, they can't really tell 100% what the signals are because they get a lot of interference from Earth-based technological signals. So you would think when they built this machine, when they built these antennas, when they was drawing them up, that they would have some kind of radius set into the detection system of these antennas. So just think about it like this. You have the Earth, and let's say the radius or the area of Earth and the radius and the area of the satellites that's above the Earth. So if you calculate the entire radius of the planet and factor in those satellites, anything that's in that radius, you know what it is. It's either coming from Earth or it's coming from these satellites in space. So it shouldn't be hard for you to differentiate between what's coming from Earth and what is coming from the satellites in space. Anything past that radius, you should know it's a signal from space. But you have to understand why it's going to keep telling you this, and I'm going to get into this in a little bit. It's going to always have a but, because you got to understand what NASA is about. Of course, they're not going to tell us what's going on. It's going to always be a but. One breath or one line is talking about, basically we picking up millions of signals out there. Then what are these millions of signals? What is that? And they have a threshold time limit of 1 hour, meaning they need to hold on to these signals for an hour to properly identify them. That's something that's suspect. And to me, if you hold on to a signal that seems to be a radio signal from somewhere else and you hold on to it for 10 minutes, that should tell you right there that it's definitely, something from probably extraterrestrials or something that is man-made or artificial, I should say. But this is the excuse that they're going to keep giving us. And you'll see anybody who's into this research, you'll be reading research from NASA, or you'll be reading research from a lot of researchers, and it'll always have that but. It seems like they have a concrete, hands down analysis or lock on this whole extraterrestrial phenomenon, and then it's a but. There's always an unsure uncertainty somewhere that's involved, and it's confusing to people who do their research. But when you look at the fine print of NASA, when you understand the laws and what's going on, things start to make a lot more sense. Now, as I said, every time we look at any of the footage of UFOs, every time we see information about extraterrestrials or what have you, we can never really accept that information because of how it's presented. It's always presented with a but. It's always presented with an asterisk or something like that, or it's not 100% certain. And as I said, because of television, we are desensitized basically to the prospect or the possibility of UFOs or what have you. So again, a lot of people look at the news, and if the news ain't talking about it, if the news is not saying that it's true, then we just, we leave it alone. So when you see these videos and when you see people talking about extraterrestrials, we say, well, if it was real, the news would have shown us or said something about it. And we have to realize that the people who want to keep this information away from us own this whole news media, as I always talk about. So now what we have to understand is, even if they found 100% proof of extraterrestrials, they have already taken care of the media. One, they own it, but they have already put into law that even if researchers or scientists or what have you find this information, if you control the media, the major means of putting out information to the masses of people, then the masses are not going to get it. You can put it on YouTube, you can put it online all you want. It will be accepted as bullcrap or will be suspect just like every other video. And that's the whole thing with the internet. You could put something out that's 100% true because it's on the internet and because mainstream media is not talking about it, because mainstream media has earned the trust for some reason of, Americans and people around the world that just believe the media about everything. The media is not saying it, it can't be true, it can't be possible. Then it's easy for them to basically hide everything and to basically have us really skeptical about anything involving extraterrestrials or UFOs. So one, you have to understand the laws. You have to understand what they have put in place to basically tell us, one, that they're never going to tell us the truth, and we're never going to know the truth. All this NASA stuff and everything that they're talking about is just smoke and mirrors, and it's all geared towards, one, them doing their research and doing what they want to do as far as space exploration, and then telling us what they want us to know, or telling us nothing at all. But I want you to take a listen to Richard Hoagland, and we're going to get into Richard Hoagland a lot in this video and the stuff he talks about. And a lot of you may have heard of him and seen some of the stuff he has put out, but I want to clarify. Well, I want to give you my stance on what I think of him and his research and everything like that. But I want you to listen to what he's saying, because some of the stuff he said in this video is true. But the premise of the video, what the video is really about, is bullshit, which we'll get into later. But take a listen and understand what NASA is really about and why they won't tell us anything. Take a look.
In 1958, we're on the threshold of its 50th anniversary next year, a civilian agency apparently exercising control over aeronautical and space activities sponsored by the United States. One of the things that I want to emphasize this morning is that NASA is not, I repeat not, a civilian space agency. This is a critical foundation of everything else we're going to say. Because if you look at Section 305, it specifically says in the enabling legislation that for the purposes of this section, NASA is considered a defense agency of the United States. And this section refers to technology, not only terrestrial developed technology, but obviously under the law, if you read it, and I urge you to get any decent lawyer and read it, if NASA were to find extraterrestrial technology somewhere out there, under this section of the Act, it would be classified because this agency is not a civilian agency. In another section of the Act, Section 205, it explicitly says that any information which has been classified by reasons of national security cannot be published in any report by NASA to Congress, to the press, or to the rest of us. This, of course, completely undercuts the idea of a civilian agency. NASA is an arm of the DoD.
So basically what Richard Hoagland is saying is, it's law. So even if they found something that pertains to extraterrestrials and the truth about them, they're not going to tell us, because they see us as, children. We won't be able to handle it. It's going to destroy America. It's going to destroy the world if we knew the truth about extraterrestrials. Which tells you, one, why, show to the world that you're going to go to the moon and that you're doing all this stuff with space or what have you. But then you have this law in place saying that we are not going to tell you the truth about anything. So then you have to think back, what if when you were supposedly showing the entire world the whole moon landing, what if aliens would have flew by? Did you not once think of that? You got to think about that. What if, during that time, it was live. Remember, there was supposed to be a live viewing of them going to the moon, which I proved in my video was bullshit. And we're going to get into that in this video as well. But what if UFOs were to pass by or something like that? And, then what? That basically throws your whole entire plan, out the door as far as not showing the world the truth about extraterrestrials. And the fact that you would try to put a law in place and put something in place to not tell us shows us that either you already know that such a thing exists and you have been dealing with it, or you have proof about it, or what have you. So they wouldn't put this law in place. They wouldn't put this whole thing in place if they didn't know for sure. So basically, you got to understand, one, they're not going to tell us the truth. Any kind of information pertaining to extraterrestrial life is going to be classified as national security, and it has to be deemed national security, a security issue, a security risk for you to give it to the public. So it's not going to be put out there. Now, if you get your own information, you're welcome to put it online, and then it's going to be scrutinized, and they're going to try to make you look crazy, and then people are going to look at it as if it's bullshit and it's bogus because it's online and it's not on the news. And we understand why that is. So now, Richard Hoagland is the guy who is known for the face on Mars. And a lot of you probably heard about this before, as I said, about that whole face on Mars thing. And he was the one who was really pushing it, him and his team, about, it being artificial and everything like that. So now this basically goes back to November 14th, 1971 with the Mariner 9 mission. It basically went to Mars and took pictures, I should say, of, dead volcanoes and canyons and basically dried up riverbeds. So February 8th, 1972, you have Mariner basically take pictures of an area known as Elysium Planitia. And Elysium Planitia is where they found pyramids, or so-called pyramids on Mars. So of course this, sparked them to really want to examine that area more. So in 1976, they sent out Viking 1 and 2 to basically go back to their area. It was equipped with more sophisticated, better quality cameras that they sent to the same area to basically take pictures to confirm the pyramids. Now, Viking 1 and 2 also went to an area called Cydonia, where this is where they found the face on Mars, but they also found more pyramids as well in this area. So this is basically what Richard Hoagland is getting into, but it's a lot, surrounding this whole story. So now also north of the Martian pyramid, they found 2 3-sided pyramids. They also found about 10 miles south of the face, they found a 5-sided pyramid that was basically 1.6 miles long and 1 mile wide. They also found a 600-foot spire-shaped object, you might as well say, that was on the edge of a crater. And a spire shape would basically be the shape of like the Eiffel Tower, or the shape of an obelisk, like the Egyptian obelisk or the Washington Monument, which is basically 600 feet tall to be, precise. So they found this stuff on Mars. And the whole argument is it artificial, or is it something that was done naturally with all the destruction, with Mars or what have you? And this is basically what the whole, pictures was trying to, people was trying to show with the pictures, that it's artificial. This is, somebody made this. This is something that's built. It's not a natural occurrence. This is something that is artificial and that some kind of intelligent life built. So basically you have with the mission with Viking, it took about over 60,000 pictures. So the pictures was taken and they basically was stored away, and they didn't tell anybody about them. Nobody talked about the face or about any of the structures or what have you. They was basically, stashed away. So then you had a couple researchers basically come across the pictures, and they started to basically draw up some attention surrounding the pictures, but nothing huge, came about with it. And so Richard Hoagland got a hold of the research that those guys was doing, and he basically took a look at the pictures and automatically connected it with Kemet, with Egypt, saying that, this is like the way it's set up is almost like Kemet, and this is something we really have to look at and really pay attention to. So he basically put together a team of the top best, computer analysts and video analysts and picture analysts and guys who's like at the top of their field at examining pictures and structures or what have you, to the point where they know if they're looking at a picture of something, if it's artificial or if it's something that's done by nature. So Hoagland and his team basically went full steam with this whole thing and examining and analyzing the pictures and basically comparing it with other photos and just, their research on being able to look at a picture and being able to tell if it's a structure, if it's artificial or natural. So I believe it was 1984 when they basically came to the conclusion that 100% it was artificial. It was an artificial structure that somebody built. This was not something that was nature or natural. This was artificial. So they basically went full steam in pursuing the truth about the whole thing, like what was going on, who built it, or what have you. And it seemed like everybody was behind them in their research and what they was trying to do. People wanted to get to the bottom of it, and everybody was with them except for NASA. NASA seemed like they was at every turn, every corner, on their back about the information. They wasn't really with it. They was trying to downplay the photos and say it was something else, or it's just a reflection of light that's giving the illusion of a face and all this and that. And Hoagland actually accused NASA of doctoring some of the pictures when they basically gave out information, because of course they had to do press about this and they would ask questions about the face all during this time. And it seemed like every time they was asked questions, the pictures that they showed seemed to be a little different from the pictures that Hoagland had, which, remember, was the originals. That's something you got to understand. He had the original pictures from those shots that the Viking took. So his pictures was a lot more clear, and everybody knows when you keep making copies, of a picture, the more copies you make, the more bad the image becomes. The closer you are to the original, is you get a better quality shot of the photo. And that's something you got to really remember when you do research on this specific subject, because of what we're going to get into later. So, everybody seemed to be with Hoagland and his team. You had Congressman Robert A. Rowe, who basically was a congressman, and he basically was on a committee that worked with NASA. So he was really with Hoagland and his team. He was really interested in their information. And he basically said, I'm going to do whatever I can, give y'all 100% back, and whatever I can do to get to the bottom of this. So it was kind of weird to Hoagland and his team, because, they're like, well, this dude works with NASA. He's on a committee that basically works with NASA. So NASA's kind of against it. So it's kind of weird that he's trying to help us out. But then, later out of the blue, he basically resigned his position. But he kept his position on the committee. He resigned his position, I guess, as a congressman, or whatever dealings or involvement he had with NASA on the same level as Hoagland. He resigned that position, but he stayed on the committee with whatever he was doing with NASA. And he basically just completely backed away, just out of the blue, backed away from everything that Hoagland was doing, which really made them look at it as like, what's going on? This dude was with it. He was, 100% with the whole thing, and then all of a sudden he backed out. So this basically caused Hoagland and his team to take the whole thing to the United Nations. And in 1992, he had a whole lecture at the United Nations, basically giving his research on the face on Mars and the pyramids. And he was basically connecting the whole structure. He was showing cities on ancient cities on Mars and structures, and trying to parallel it with Egypt, with Kemet. So this was huge. And you got to think about, once the United Nations we're talking about. A picture is a picture. I mean, just think about if you came to the United Nations with a picture that looked like something, what you would have to do to actually get a committee put together to listen to what you have to say about these pictures. But they did with Hoagland, which, all the information is not really put out there. But, of course, Hoagland had a little bit of clout. But, it's a lot of information that they must have had, other than the pictures, that gave validity to what Hoagland was saying. So when he gave his lecture, they took it seriously. It was something that was not looked at as, spooky or weird or something like that. They actually was believing what he said, so much so that you had Sierra Leone and you had Grenada basically put the Mars face on stamps. Now understand, NASA already had an orbiter out there orbiting Mars, where they could just basically retake some pictures, more pictures closer or what have you, to basically try to re-examine, what was on Mars, the face and the structures. So it didn't look like, NASA was trying to do such a thing. Like, they basically was just trying to say, well, it's not what you think it is. It's not worth the time. And do you understand how this stuff works and da-da-da. But, they was pushing the issue that, we got to go re-examine these places. We got to get better cameras out there. We got to get something on the ground or what have you. And NASA was basically they was backing away. Now understand, as I said, they had an orbiter already out there. So when Hoagland and the team was basically like, you already got an orbiter out there, just go, take the pictures. Just mysteriously, the orbiter was down. He lost contact with it or something like that. Something was wrong with the orbiter. And, they said, oh no, something wrong with the orbiter. We lost contact. It's basically down. So, that's suspect. Then you had, just out of the blue, a few years later, NASA just basically started, getting on board with the whole thing, saying, okay, well, it's possible, and we got to go back. And then NASA just completely changed its tune on the whole situation on Mars with the face and the pyramids and everything like that. Changed its tune. So then you had in 1998, it was in 98 where you had the Mars orbiter was basically coming back around Cydonia where the face was at. And they said, okay, well, we got a higher resolution camera out there with this orbiter, and we're going to take pictures of the area again to see what we see. So then you had pictures been taken. The pictures came back. They wasn't released immediately, which was suspect. But then when the pictures came out again, it looked like this, the face. A lot of you, as I said, know about this already. The face looked completely not like a face. So much so that it's like, how could you ever think it was a face in the first place when you look at the new pictures? Now, obviously, Hoagland and his team was shocked at the pictures because, just look at it. It doesn't look like a face. And it's like, something is wrong. You can obviously, I don't care what nobody said when it comes to these pictures. When you go and look at the older photos, the original ones that Hoagland had, this is one of the things right here. Look at the top of the head on the face. There are dots. You can see these holes there. Now, when you look at the later pictures, where are those holes? Where do you go? They're gone. The holes is not there no more. And one of the reasons why the holes was so, telltale is because people was looking at the face as a hockey mask. People was like, oh yeah, the holes make the face look like a hockey mask, and people made the face with a Jason body and stuff like that. A lot of people were saying it's a hockey mask on Mars. This is what the public was saying about the face when a lot of people was looking at it. Those holes was something that everybody was talking about. Then when you look at the later pictures or the supposedly higher resolution shots, where are those holes? They're gone. Now, it's nothing that you could mistake on the new pictures as being holes. So what is that whole thing about? Which NASA doesn't really address. What it's about. Then when you look at the little carving on the side of the face, it's not, when you got to understand, they took angles. It's a couple shots of this face, and in every angle it looks like a face. But when these new pictures come back, it does not look like a face at all. It look like something defaced the face. So this is what Hoagland was basically saying. He was pushing it like, something is up. NASA either doctored the pictures or they went there and defaced the face or something like that. And it was something that a lot of people who was on board with the whole thing in the beginning basically left it alone, saying, okay, well, we was wrong. And okay, it could have been shadows. But to anybody who really analyzed those photos, like those researchers, they said there's no way that this could be the same thing. Either you change the photos or you deface the face. So now understand, people bought into it. They bought into what NASA was showing with the face, and people actually believed that that's how the face really looked, and it wasn't a face, it was just a mistake. And then of course, you had the powers that be in their media finally talk about it and put it out to the people, put it out in the press as the face is not a face. The face is just a mistake, it's just a misunderstanding, and you understand if the news talking about it, everybody's going to believe it. So if somebody want to bring it up later and say, no, what about the face on Mars? They're going to say, well, no, the news already clarified that whole thing. It was on the news. The news clarified and said it wasn't a face. It was just a mistake. It's a hoax. So they basically wiped that thing out. Everybody was like, it's not a face and this and that. But then you got to understand, everybody was so focused on the face, they didn't pay attention to the pyramids. They forgot all about that. Everybody was so focused on the face, and they forgot about the 600-foot spire structure that was there. So everybody focused on the face and not realizing that the pictures came back with the pyramids looking the same, with the 600-foot spire structure still casting that shadow that clearly could not be artificial. I mean, that clearly cannot be natural, but only artificial for it to be cast in the shadow the way that it did. Now, this is the thing, when they did more research into that area, the original 1976 mission of Viking, they found that the Viking orbiter, when it got to that location where the 600-foot spire structure was at, the orbiter snapped 4 rapid pictures in succession. 4 quick pictures, 4 shots, right? Never again, or none during that trip, all the years it was out there, has it ever took 4 rapid pictures of any other place in succession the way it did when it got over that area with the 600-foot spire obelisk, or whatever it is, the structure. So this is something that had to be pre-programmed into the orbiter before it went out there. It's not something they could have done remotely and then get shots off that fast, because of the time it takes between them actually sending out a remote signal and then getting to the orbiter. So it was something that they already knew, that they programmed into the orbiter before it even went out. You know, why? That whole thing was suspect. And then you never again see it again, because that is the dagger right there. That is the smoking gun that the researchers was talking about earlier. This one thing, and we're wrong about everything else. We could be wrong about the face. We could be wrong about every other pyramid. But that 600-foot spire structure is in no way natural. It's 100% artificial, and the shadow that it casts, there's no way nature can do something like that. I mean, just think about the Washington Monument and something not, it being natural, like, and then when you just look at the general area of everything around there, where did it come from? If it was natural, what put it there and then left it there and then didn't leave no footprint of what put it there, in its way? So you would think you could see what put it there if something naturally made it, or where it came from. For these structures and areas to be the way it is, even with the pyramids, what did it? How could that be natural in the way it's set up? And this is basically what Hoagland and his team was talking about, that anybody with a brain can look at this stuff and see there's no way all of these things could be a coincidence, that all these things is just natural and that none of them are artificial. One, when you just go back and look at the pyramid. When you look at the pyramid and just look down on top of it, then look at the pyramid in Kemet, you can see clearly it looks the same. It looks the same. And we know the pyramid in Kemet is artificial. It was built. There's no way I've seen a lot of pyramids that's natural. Remember in my video when I went out to Pyramid Canyon, I posted that video up there. I was talking about all these pyramid-shaped mountains that's out there in Pyramid Canyon. I just came from there now, like on my way to I'm going to go see the Hoover Dam and everything. So I passed them again, and those you can see the rigid rocks. You can tell, it's natural. It does look like a pyramid, but you can tell some of them is just naturally done, and it's just the way it is. But when you look at the lines on the one that's on Mars, there's no way that can be natural. And then when you look at the way that the Great Pyramid is in Kemet and look at the lines and how they kind of sort of match up, there's no way. Now, of course, this was NASA basically, because it's law and because they basically told you in the 50s, I think it was 58, that they're not going to ever tell us the truth. They're not going to reveal it. So can you just imagine if they just came out and say, yo, this is true. Yes, this is artificial. Martians built this, or what have you. How different things would be, today. So now when you just examine the entire story and everything that happened, it's clear to most people that NASA either did face-to-face or edited the pictures or what have you. They did something. Because when you just look at those original photos, those first photos, there's no way in the world that you can go from that to what NASA showed us. If that was the case, then there's no way we can have mistaken those original photos as being not a face. I mean, it's not like the resolution was that messed up. And I played with this picture. I played with it, with the original one, to the one that Hoagland was showing everybody. I played with it. I played with it on Photoshop. I played with the game. I played with it. I made it look as old and grainy as I possibly can. In every instance, it still looked like a face. Even when you just put it under a higher resolution, it looks like a face. There's no way around that. So, the photos and, NASA and the power they got with the media and everything just convinced people that, it wasn't a face. And that basically kind of sort of was the end of that whole thing with NASA and the face. And people just basically left it alone. Now, again, everybody was so focused on the face, there were other things that they did not pay attention to concerning Mars. One of which was the fact that tunnels. They found crazy tunnel system on Mars. What is that? And you can't tell me that these tunnels are natural tunnels, but they didn't really address the tunnels. They also found, Mars has a North Pole and a South Pole. There's ice on Mars. So ice, basically you have water, you have ice, you have carbon dioxide. Now, if you remember from Saturn 5, I was talking about cyanobacteria, and that, what it did was release carbon dioxide in the air, which basically eventually created our atmosphere, our ozone layer, and created an environment for the planet to sustain oxygen, basically. So if you think about it, with the ice, with the caps, North Pole, South Pole, I should say, on Mars, if it was to be melted down, if it was to be, if you can extract the carbon dioxide from it to create an atmosphere, it's a possibility that you can create an atmosphere and then an environment that can support oxygen to where it can be life and people can breathe on Mars. If any of you have seen the movie Total Recall, I'm pretty sure you have. Total Recall, that's basically what happened. And it's funny, that movie came out, I believe, 1990, right around the time when all this stuff was going on. So you had, in Total Recall, remember at the end, which is like the funniest part, when they fly out there and their head be about to pop. Remember, it was about aliens who basically built a machine on Mars that was basically going to turn the core of Mars, because they said the core of Mars was frozen, which must be the case with Mars, really with the real Mars, because if you have volcanoes that's basically dead and barren, I mean, there's not no molten lava down there that's, with lava and stuff gushing out. So the core could possibly be frozen, but in the movie, they were saying that, the core was frozen and these aliens developed a machine that was going to melt the core and basically release the carbon dioxide into the air and create an atmosphere for people to breathe. Or remember, at the end, that's basically what happened. He turned on the machine and they flew out there and their head was about to pop, but then the oxygen came, pretty fast at the end so they can breathe, on Mars. So, this was in the 90s. It's something they was hitting to and alluding to. And, when they do movies, they're basically trying to tell you something. A lot of people probably didn't put those connections together because, it wasn't until they didn't really dwell. People, unless you're going to actually go and do the research and read on Mars, who the hell is really thinking about Mars? I mean, come on. A lot of people not even worry about it. So until they put the research out there for people to really start thinking about what was going on with that stuff, ain't nobody paying attention to the North Pole and the South Pole of Mars. This is something you really got to look into yourself. So a lot of people weren't even concerned at the fact that, if it's water, if it's a North and South Pole, if it's water on Mars, it's a possibility that at one time the planet sustained life because you have water. And, that's what water does. Basically, you have to think about the microbes and the organisms that can possibly be in that water. Not just that can be on a dry land. So, and that's basically being supported by that water. So all these things and all this stuff was not put out there to the public to get people thinking about it. This is stuff you got to really read in books, pertaining to Mars. So now, of course, they would have never told us the truth about Mars anyway, because it's already in their law that they can't release the information because they feel like it's going to basically be destructive to the planet. And, we can't basically handle the information or come to the realization that it's actual, extraterrestrials that exist and what have you. And this law is out there publicly for people to view, but because the media is not just going to come out and say, well, what's the point of NASA? What's the point of all this scientific research that all of our tax dollars is spending all this money on to research this stuff? What is the point if we're never going to know the truth? So basically, if the news media just came out and said, hey, do y'all know it's a law in place saying that the government is not going to tell us the truth? So why the hell are we funding this stuff? Why are we giving them money? And they're not talking about it. People don't care. We got stuff to worry about. We got to pay bills or what have you. So we don't really pay attention to none of that stuff in the first place. So now, with this whole thing with Hoagland, and this is one of the reasons why I don't trust him. I don't trust his research now. I really believe he was on to something with the whole Mars thing. And the thing is, something happened with that probably after the whole thing was over. They probably approached him and bought him off or shut him up or threatened his life or something because he changed his tune. Now, he did put out some videos and he started getting into this whole thing with NASA for a little bit. And they basically shut him up. And not shut him up on everything, but on that Mars face issue and precedent and everything like he was before. And he started, to me, when I started looking at some of his research, putting a little disinformation, mixing truth with fiction and truth with lies. And he would mix a lot of truth in that much truth would give you the trust in everything that he was saying, but really he was spinning the situation. Now, to me, anybody who pushes we went to the moon as being a fact is an agent. That's just how I see it. Anybody that pushes that whole thing is either stupid or an agent, because as I said before, it's basically 100% proven we can't go to Mars. We can't go to the moon, I should say. We've never been to the moon. We haven't been there. Anybody who's pushing that thing is an agent or an idiot. So now I went into this before, and if you pay attention and just look at everything NASA's talking about, what they put on their website, we can't get to the moon. Now, I talked about this, I showed this video before, but for those who didn't see it, just take a look and see. We can't get there, and this is basically the reason why. Take a look.
Orion is getting ready to launch. My name is Kelly Smith, and I work on navigation and guidance for Orion. Orion is NASA's next-generation spacecraft. Built with versatility in mind, it can take astronauts deeper into space than we've ever gone before, to an asteroid or even onto Mars. For these missions, Orion has to be one tough spacecraft, withstanding high speeds, searing temperatures, and extreme radiation. Before we can send astronauts into space on Orion, we have to test all of its systems. And there's only one way to know if we got it right. Fly it in space. Orion's over 100 miles up and going about 17,000 miles per hour. Just as it passes over the Indian Ocean, we lose communication. This is expected. The communications link we have through satellites to Orion is momentarily lost, but Orion continues to receive and process data. Its computers can handle 480 million instructions per second. As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Radiation like this could harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. Naturally, we have to pass through this danger zone twice, once up and once back. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space. For this flight, it's time to head home. The upper stage of the rocket triggers separation. Orion's jets fire to turn it into the proper position to re-enter Earth's atmosphere. No matter what happens now, we're coming in.
So again, the whole Van Allen radiation belt is why we can't go. And he's saying in the video that, we can't get through the belt and, humans can't survive. And we know about the Van Allen radiation belt. So again, as the video was saying, why can't we just use the technology we used in the 60s with the Apollo missions to go now? Because we obviously didn't have the technology, because we obviously never went to the moon. It's all bullshit. So now in the video clip I showed you earlier about Hoagland talking about NASA, and I'm going to show a couple more clips probably from that video in this video. But as I said, I don't believe, basically, I don't believe nothing in this video except for the clips I'm going to show you in this video that's from that one. Because again, basically, if that video is actually on YouTube, but if anybody has watched it, you understand that he's basically talking about us actually going to the moon. That he's basically saying that it's actually happened before, that we didn't really go. Now this is the issue. This is how they use deception. This is how I can tell that he is now an agent and they basically got to him. Because one, before he did this whole lecture, I believe this is like in 2000 something, the information had already got out. Same thing basically happened again where pictures surfaced. I'm gonna say pictures surfaced. You had a NASA insider come out with the pictures and basically say, he worked for NASA. He did it all undercover, basically saying he worked for NASA. He found these pictures, and they've been basically lying to us about the moon. We never went to the moon, but the orbiter basically did take pictures of these huge structures on Mars. And that, remember, the whole thing came out about the dark side of the moon being some kind of alien base. And this is what this guy was confirming. He said it's bases on Mars. There's alien ships and there's alien bases on Mars. And he believed that the U.S. is basically in some kind of joint, some kind of joint venture with extraterrestrials, and that they have bases and stuff on Mars. So then you had Hoagland in this video come out and basically say that Apollo did go to the moon. They went to the moon, they landed on the moon, everything happened. And he basically was presenting in that video pictures from the moon landing, and he was basically turning up the let's say like the alpha or the channel, playing with the channels on those pictures, and it's basically showing in the background of a lot of those photos these so-called structures. Now Hoagland says that the structures are glass structures, so he's saying that it's these huge glass structures on Mars that they basically blacked out from the original moon landing when Apollo actually did go, and Neil Armstrong and all of them actually landed on the moon. That the whole cover up was them basically trying to cover up the structures and what was on there. Now again, we never went to the moon. That whole thing has been blown out the water. So basically what he's trying to do is connect the two. So if anybody was looking into the story from the insider about the structures on Mars, they would immediately connect it with what Hoagland was saying about the structures on Mars and say, well, wait a minute, we never went to the moon, it's bullshit. So then that way, it destroys the validity of the real story, because everybody knows we never went there. And then you got to ask yourself something, why go anyway? Why actually spend the money to go to the moon, to take these photographs and go through all the trouble of blacking out the background or what have you and doing all, when you could just do all that shit on Earth? You could just fake it like they really did. Why even risk it? This is NASA we talking about. This is MIT geniuses that we talking about. You mean to tell me that they don't know that even if you black out the back or you do something to the background, that you can play with the alpha channels and it will basically show you stuff back there? You don't think these eggheads knew basically what Hoagland was talking about? So why would they do it? Not just that, why would they even deal with a situation to where these pictures can be leaked? See, it has to come from an insider if the information is going to come out, because ain't nobody from NASA actually going to put the stuff out. It has to come from an insider, somebody who works there, they got a hold of this stuff and wants to put it out. Not everybody has the same agenda, and you can see that was one of the reasons why NASA basically, remember, they shut down. They basically said, well, NASA's not going to be sending anything out there, we're just going to be going to the space station. And NASA really, because they couldn't trust the employees. They can't trust the people that was working there. There's only a handful of people that was actually going to commit to the agenda that NASA had and basically hiding everything. And, good luck finding a whole bunch of eggheads that's out there that's willing to do that. You're not going to keep finding people that's smart enough to work for NASA, but at the same time wants to hide everything from the people. So it's tough. So you better off shutting it down and trying to do things, within, your group. So they probably train people that's going to abide by the little shit that they want to hide. But what Hoagland was saying, it didn't fit. It didn't make sense, especially due to the fact that we never went to the moon. It's all bullshit. I mean, when you just take a look at the supposed spacecraft that, landed on the moon, I mean, so many holes have been poked into that spacecraft. I mean, the spacecraft itself looked so primitive. It looked so fake and, made up, and it didn't look like it can survive a trip to space, let alone land on the moon. It looked like crap. It looked like something some teenagers built. So that's one of the things. So a lot of people, really can't fathom that we never went there. A lot of people still believe it because, they broadcast it around the world. And with so many millions of people tuned into the so-called moon landing, there's people all around the world tuning in. Japan was watching. So a lot of people would think that it's no way in the world that our government would do something so big and it be fake. It's a huge hoax. So huge. And a lot of people can't fathom it being fake because, of course, the news media put it out. And they believe that, well, if it was fake, then the news media would have did a story on it and this and that. But it's something that is still questioned to this day. And as I showed in a video before, when Buzz and all of them was talking about it, and one of the things is they can't really recall what happened while it was on the moon. They can't remember it. They can't, none of them. It's crazy if it's, okay, it's not as suspect if it's one guy. But when it's everybody who went, who has basically no memory of how it felt and what happened when it was up there, that's suspicious. It's suspect. So my point up to this point of the video is to get you to understand, one, there's so much mystery, so many things surrounding the moon and Mars and space and everything like that is suspect. And it's like, why does it have to be? If there's no extraterrestrials, if there's no UFOs or what have you, why all of the secrecy? Why the laws? Why everything's so weird and suspect? Why does this stuff seem like bullshit? Why the cover up? Why? And when you don't have concrete information, concrete proof, things like this, what I've explained so far in this video, gives a lot of validity to the fact that there's something going on with extraterrestrials, with UFOs, or what have you. So we're going to get deeper into this as the series goes on, because we got to look at this stuff and say, of course, we're not going to find that smoking gun, but we can get enough evidence, enough facts, and start putting this stuff together to basically, prove reasonable doubt, as you can say. It's beyond a shadow of a doubt. Because of what we have seen so far, I should say, because of this information we've compiled, I should say, that we can conclude that it must be extraterrestrials out there, that the whole UFO phenomenon, the extraterrestrial phenomenon must be true. This stuff, these sightings and everything, not all the sightings, because some of them just outright bogus, but most of this stuff has to have validity to it based upon what we can compile of everything that we have been seeing and experiencing with NASA and this whole phenomenon. So we're going to really be getting into this stuff because there's a lot of questions, a lot of things that was done, a lot of so-called incidences that happened, that a lot of stuff was not reported on by the mainstream media. And if you don't read books, then you're not going to figure a lot of this stuff out. Now, me personally, there's a lot of books that I read that I get into that a lot of people would consider like weird or kooky and stuff like that. This is the, you've probably seen this pop up on the screen, the Stargate Conspiracy. This is a really good book that a lot of people should really get into because he uses a lot of facts. And this is what people got to understand. As I always say, they put it in books. The truth is in books. And people got to understand that when you have a book and you have people using actual things that happen, actual events, primary sources, or what have you, I mean, just that alone, it tells you, it gives validity to the book. You don't have to believe the entire book and everything that's in it. You can take those pieces from the book and just add it to your research as being proven and being valid, and you can continue on with your research. But this book, a lot of the information that I'll be talking about in the series, some of it comes from that book and from other books, but it's a lot of things that people will never know if they don't read, because you'll only find them in books. It's not like the news media is just going to come up and bring back up stories from the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, especially pertaining to UFO phenomena, extraterrestrial phenomena. They're not going to talk about this stuff. So you gotta be a researcher. This is why I do what I do, because I know a lot of people is not going to get into this stuff. So I get into it to bring up this information, to get it, into your consciousness, so you can understand that there has and still is a cover up. There is, record. They're on record as saying they're never going to tell us the truth, basically. So these are things that you need to know and build in your consciousness and understand why you must do the research, why you must look, why you must understand why things are the way that it is with this whole extraterrestrial phenomena, because they cover up so much. It's always an if, and, or but. It's always, everything looks so well and good, but then something just cuts off the rest of the proof. And you'll find this a lot. I know I have in my, I say I've been going on a good 12 years now researching just extraterrestrial stuff, because again, when you study Kemet, it still blows your mind with how, especially with how much they was into astrology and everything like that, and into space. You gotta say to yourself, it gotta be something out there, something is up. So now when you think critically and you just start examining stuff, and this is something that you're going to really start picking up on as you do research, critical thinking is a must. You got to really think deep on things. And one of the things that you really call into question is, why would NASA, with this whole law in place and basically telling us that they're never going to tell us the truth, why would they tell us anything about Mars? Why would they even put any information out there about it? And the whole thing is, what you got to realize is, one, before they tell us, they'll give us a date and time and year or what have you that they've been doing their research. But of course, they have already begun the research before they told us about it. So it's not that they started the date that they tell us. They obviously started before that, because if they found something that they don't want us to know about before that, then they don't have to address that date. They can just go ahead and do their research during that time. If it's something that they want to tell us, that's because it's nothing, then they tell us. If it's something that they want to hide or cover up that's huge, they won't say nothing at all. But in this case, with the whole with Mars in the face and everything like that, remember, they wasn't going to tell us anything. Remember, that's something you got to understand. They wasn't going to say anything about it until the pictures was found. And remember, this was like months later. It was like a lot of time passed between when they took the pictures, and they clearly stashed them away. And they wasn't going to say anything. And the pictures surfaced, and they just had to deal with it. So this is what you got to understand, that they always go beforehand and do research. One of the weirdest things that I always talk about is with George Lucas. How did he know about the Iapetus, the moon of Saturn? Because the Death Star looked exactly like it. So you're talking about, it was August 20th, I believe, 1977, when Voyager left Earth to basically go, towards Saturn. It didn't reach Iapetus until August 1981, where it basically took the first up-close pictures of Iapetus. Star Wars had already came out. So you got to think about it. Voyager left 1977 to head towards Saturn, Iapetus. Star Wars came out 1977. It didn't reach Iapetus until 81, where it took the first pictures. So how in the hell did George Lucas know what the hell that moon looked like? Because when you look at the pictures, it's clearly where he got the idea, where he got the image of, the Death Stars from Iapetus. Now, a lot of people will look at that and say, you don't know that. You don't know where he got it from. It just can be a coincidence or what have you. Well, it's funny. Remember, they came out 77. So 77 Star Wars comes out right around the time all this Mars stuff is going on. Now, when you look at the original face, the original picture of the face on Mars, Look at C3PO and look at his face. Look at the face of C3PO and look at that face on Mars and tell me that's not where he got that face from. It's the same face, basically. And a lot of people was asking that question, where did he get the idea, the look for that face? I mean, even with the hole in C3PO's stomach could be the crater that's basically south of the face. You know, if you really want to look at it technically. So when you just look at him and look at the face of C3PO and the face on Mars, that's clearly, to me, that's where he got it from. A lot of people have made that connection possibly by now. And the connection is easy to make when you know Lucas's connection with NASA and everything like that. Now, this is something else that Hoagland was talking about, the connection with Lucas and NASA. And a lot of people know about the whole lightsaber going out in space that Hoagland was talking about. You know, take a look.
This is the mission patch of the current Discovery mission, SCS-120. There's been a slight alteration in that mission because a few weeks ago it was announced that it would, to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Star Wars, a film, a fictional film by George Lucas, it would carry into orbit this. This is a Jedi lightsaber. The Jedi Knights have gone into space aboard this Discovery mission. And of course, inquiring minds would like to know why. Why is so much effort, as you're going to see, it's a lot of effort, has been expended to take a plastic movie prop, and not from the 1977 premiere of the film, but from the 1983 second part of the series, Return of the Jedi. Hopefully, by the end of the morning, you will know. This is Luke Skywalker. It is his lightsaber that is going into orbit. And this is the actual prop, which was, ferried from Oakland, from the Lucas Studios, down to Houston, accepted at the Houston Hobby Airport by the marketing director of Space Center Houston, which is the visitor center at the National Aeronautics and Space Administration Johnson Space Center, carried in his fuel, carrying case, complete with foam, carefully protected, now whizzing around the Earth to make a 6 million mile journey to nowhere and to be brought back and to be displayed there in Houston, all in honor of this man, George Lucas. Okay, why is NASA going to all this trouble? Is it, as has been reported, merely a marketing ploy? Are we simply looking at something that is designed to make money for a private corporation off the taxpayer? No, actually not. That's the trivial explanation, and as you're going to see, trivial explanations have been trotted out for the last 40 years to explain things that in fact are far more interesting and far more serious. This is the manifest. This is what Shuttle Discovery 120 is supposed to do. This is number of crew, launch times, landing times, number of orbits, etc., etc. Let me translate. The launch time was actually 11:38 a.m. EDT. NASA was absolutely fanatic about it had to be launched at 11:38. We had problems with ice. They are in orbit now with potential problems with the wings. I don't know whether you are aware of that, but there's a potential problem of crazing and cracks on that critical reentry tile on the front surfaces of both wings. They launched anyway, looking to the press and to us like they didn't care about safety, even though that has been the watchword since the Columbia disaster. Let me show you why they had to launch. It has to do again with this man and his interesting obsession with little robots, because his first film was THX 1138. Ergo, NASA deliberately launched 120 at 11:38 a.m. to coincide, coincidentally, with the title of George Lucas's first feature film. Now, this is very, very intriguing because you can't do this. This is not technically something that just happens because you wiggle your little pinky. If you look at the celestial mechanics of orbiting in space, rendezvousing two sets of objects, the shuttle and the space station, there is an enormous amount of back engineering that has to go into adjusting launch times to fit an arbitrary schedule. For one thing, there's a whole bunch of Earth satellites in low Earth orbit, and there have been several shuttle missions which have actually had to be delayed so that when the spacecraft launches, the ET and the shuttle don't run into some piece of orbiting junk in low Earth orbit being tracked by NORAD. The fact that this mission went forward as scheduled and had to be kept on that schedule wing problems notwithstanding, has to do with this time and with this gadget, and the fact that for some reason, all of this had to be made to work for symbolic, unknown, hidden reasons by an agency which has not talked about this at all. You've heard about the lightsaber, those who are paying attention. You haven't heard that they wanted to launch at exactly the time that would commemorate Lucas's first film.
So these are things you got to look at, you know, suspect things. The whole George Lucas thing in Star Wars and all that, just everything that he does with a lot of his movies, Indiana Jones and all the information like that is suspect. And as I always talk about, you know, these movies are the new scriptures, the new Bible, the new way for them to transmit information and to pass information around to each other and to put stuff out there. And these are the people that they use. George Lucas and all these people, who knows? They're probably high-ranking Masons or what have you. They're probably Shriners, or they definitely connected for them to have the information that they have. Clearly, everything about Star Wars, the whole thing surrounding the Force, witchcraft, or what have you, and consciousness and everything like that, is clearly on the line of all this stuff. So he's clearly involved and he has knowledge. Same thing with Spielberg and what have you, a lot of these other directors. So, you know, these are the players. These are the people who are in, who understand what's going on and what the stuff is about. To me, clearly, C-3PO is the face on Mars, to me. And that's where he got it from, just like he got the Death Star from Iapetus, one of the moons of Saturn. And just everything surrounding that, which I got into before, is all suspect and it's weird when you really start looking into it. But this is all things that's really going towards the whole extraterrestrial phenomena and the truth about it, because there's a lot of questions people got to ask. Even when you look at what mainstream media do put out, and you still got to ask yourself a question of why. Now, me personally, I thought that in 2012, around when they had the whole Illuminati Olympics, if you pay attention to that time, I really thought that they was going to announce during that time the existence of extraterrestrials. And when you look at the commercials from that Olympics, not just all the Illuminati commercials and, you know, what have you, but the commercials, the video footage that they put out that made stuff look like, you know, UFOs. Now and again, if you remember from 1984, the Olympics in Los Angeles, when they had the UFO come down, you know, Bill Cooper, a lot of people were saying that was an actual real, you know, craft hovering under its own power. I mean, this is 1984. That kind of technology would be amazing and had to be from some kind of extraterrestrial for 1984. So it wasn't no helicopters holding it up. It wasn't no kind of cables or anything. Remember, it was, you know, dangled over top of people, you know, and then the alien came down and everything like that. And it was supposed to be to gauge the conversation or the emotions or feelings about an alien invasion or aliens actually coming and revealing themselves to the world. Now, if you've seen that video, you remember that. I mean, when you just really look at it, it looked like, dude, like this is a real, you know, UFO. But for those of you who may not have seen it, I'm gonna take a look at this quick clip of it.
Something's gonna happen here now. Here comes the spaceship. You believe this? The crowd just beginning to see it now. Oh, it's several hundred feet high still. Shining its light, finding this strange sight in the small planet it is discovered, huh? Gurr.
Earth signals back from the center of the field. Earth signals back.
He's still at about 1,000 feet. Trumpets and the lights signaling to the spaceship giving its return signal. Friend or foe? There's a signal from Earth. Made contact now. Looks like it's going to be all right. Will they land? Spaceship weighs 2 tons. Powered by jet fuel.
Don't believe it. Really.
Glad you came back.
Oh, absolutely. Magnificent.
Now, when you look at that, that looks super real to me. But they did that to basically gauge the people's reaction, to see if people would panic, if they would freak out, to see what people would be talking about the next day about the Olympics. And then the media basically doesn't really mention it no more, don't really talk about it, don't drum it up. Nobody really gets into how it was done, how they accomplished it, and everything like that until, you know, you had so-called conspiracy theorists later on come out and start talking about, well, wait a minute, let's basically talk about what we just seen, you know, during the Olympics. That thing looked real. But again, it was gauging the people's reaction. And then again, this is still all around that time when we're dealing with the whole Mars thing and the facing the pyramids on Mars. Around this time, this is the 84 Olympics. So this stuff was still going on with Richard Hoagland and all the information coming out about the Mars face and everything. So then you fast forward to 2012 Olympics and the whole Illuminati Olympics, you know, everything like that. Remember, I talked about this in a previous video. I forget which one it is. When I had the commercial that I want to show, they basically, that commercial is not on the internet no more. They got rid of it. Can't find it on YouTube. Can't find the commercial nowhere. But I think I have it in one of my older videos. I just can't remember which one. But if you remember this one commercial they had where the Olympic Stadium was basically a spaceship. It's like a flying saucer flying through England and destroying stuff and everything like that. And when you pay attention to the whole Illuminati eye, the aliens with the eye and everything like that, the whole theme seemed to be like this alien theme. And remember, people was talking about before the Olympics supposed to be this mock or fake alien invasion, and that's what the commercial seemed to show. Then it was also supposed to be, people believe that Syria was supposed to attack the 2012 Olympics, or it was going to be set up to attack it, or it was supposed to be some kind of hoax with Syrians attacking the Olympics and everything like that, which was going to be an excuse for us to invade Syria, what have you. But that came out, so that didn't happen. And a lot of things were supposed to happen around the 2012 Olympics that people was figuring out ahead of time, which we believe is the reason why they didn't do none of this stuff, because people already knew. So we just had the Illuminati Olympics basically, and it was supposedly a spacecraft seen around that time and all the crap with that. But the thing is, what is up with all the, you know, the UFO stuff? What is up with that? Now, if you remember, you had the Russian Prime Minister, TheMystery, I forget his last name, basically come out and say to Obama to go ahead and tell, you know, the world about UFOs. Go and tell them about the aliens or what have you. And You got to remember, let's go all the way back to the Mariner 9 mission to Mars. Russia was there. It wasn't just American orbiters around Mars and the moon and what have you. Russia still had their orbiters out there. So everything we saw, Russia already know. Russia already had detailed pictures and everything, the same stuff we have, probably way better quality or what have you. So they knew what's out there. They know what's going on. They know everything. So, he telling Obama to tell us, this is 2013, he was saying that right after the Olympics. And, everybody thought it was supposed to be some kind of announcement. And Obama was supposed to announce aliens, living among us or what have you. But it never happened. So you remember the Canadian former defense minister, what's his name? Paul Hellyer. Paul Hellyer, this guy, basically came out and was talking about how we have 4 species of aliens living amongst us. And, everything that the governments around the world is basically doing is they have some kind of agenda, and maybe these aliens have an agenda. And, he did a lot of interviews about this, which was kind of suspect. But this is basically one of the interviews that he did. I want you to take a look and listen to what he's saying. Take a look.
There are many species, and I'm convinced they have different agendas. Just like maybe the United States, Russia, China might have different agendas. So if you say, well, what do Earthlings think? Well, who are you talking about? Are you talking about the Russians or the Americans or the Germans or who? And I think there have been face-to-face meetings, probably with species who look very much like humans. And some of them come from planets in our own solar system. And they are people who could be walking down the corridors of the Pentagon and would be unrecognized. Then there are other species, such as the Greys, for example, which are very distinct in their looks. They're short, they have very large heads, very long arms, and very big eyes, and they're more like the ones that we usually see in the cartoons of extraterrestrials. They're not little green men, which we used to say, little green men from Mars, but they're short, dark-skinned, what they were designated as by the United States government, extraterrestrial biological entities, EBs. So the EBs, that group of them, look very different. And they may have an agenda which is quite different from some of the others, because there are different degrees of spirituality. And in the meantime, the MJ-12, this is the very small elite group that President Truman set up to manage the extraterrestrial file and to report directly to the president. They allegedly made a deal with the Greys to exchange technology and to allow them to do a limited number. That's a joke to say, but the deal was a limited number of abductions in exchange for technology. And that as a result of this arrangement, over the years, the United States has managed to what we call back engineer or replicate the extraterrestrial technology, both on the weapons side and on the transportation side, to the point where Dr. Stephen Greer, as witnesses, said about the flying saucers that you can't tell whether it's one of theirs or one of ours because they look so much alike. So they have made tremendous progress in 60 years. And they have developed very powerful weapons, far more powerful than anything they had before. And they have, according to Ben Rich, who was the former head of the Lockheed Skunk Works, which was working on these kinds of vehicles, they now have, as he said, quote, the capability of taking E.T. home. And so when you say happiness, I think you have to then say happiness between whom and by whom, because there's no carte blanche single answer to that question. I know that there is some concern about one breed of reptilians, and that maybe they have some connection with the Greys. I don't know. But again, you can't, it's not carte blanche, because there are branches of the reptilians, and there are allegedly some good, positive creatures in this with that name. But the United States, when it was briefing presidents, has always said that most of them are benign, but there was one that wasn't. They've never named the one. No one's ever told me who it was. But I suspect they're talking about this one branch of the reptilians, who, if you wanted a nice way to sum it up, would represent the dark. And on the other hand, the people from Mars and Venus and Saturn, who look more like us, are more spiritual, and who would represent the light. So it's not an easy question. No definitive answer, because I don't know precisely what the answer is. I suspect no one knows 100%. When I say no one, I mean no human in the realm of authority. But there are certainly people in the United States cabal who have more information about the subject than any of the rest of us, because they have been collecting it assiduously for years and years, and they have probably had more contact with different groups over a longer period than just about anybody else. So they have a lot to disclose when we can get them to disclose it. But disclosure is essential. The information is there. It's in the public domain. But the cabal owns so much of the press, both print and electronic, that it's not going to get into the press that would convince him, like his own paper. And that is a problem.
Now, he's talking about reptilians among us, good and bad, other species, the Greys or what have you. And, talking about them, the three planets that the powers that be seem to be obsessed with: Mars, Venus, Saturn. And we got into that. We're going to get into that a lot more in this series. And, what he's saying, or when you pay attention to me, I'm saying a lot of truth in what he's saying. He's talking about levels of consciousness. We're going to definitely get into that. And you really have to pay attention. There's so much he put into what he said that we're going to get into. We're going to probably use this video again, come back to it, to this video. So it's a lot of stuff he was alluding to in that video. And when you really, because I studied up on this guy, when you pay attention to what he's saying, not just him, others as well, about what's going on. So now, supposedly, these aliens, these 4 alien species among us, they have a code of conduct. that they can't really interfere in the direction that the powers that be is taking the planet, but they will not reveal themselves to the world, exclusively, like, letting everybody know what's going on and that they actually exist until the world unites. Now, supposedly, and Paul Hellyer talks about this in another interview about, and I said this before in my video as well, I'm telling you, when you start reading up on this stuff, everybody's basically saying the same thing. And the people that do what I do, people that's underground with this information, after the launch of the atomic bomb, when they realized that we had this capability to cause destruction on such a large scale, is when the aliens revealed themselves. And he talked about the Majestic 12 and all. This is all around that time. I mean, it all fits when you start paying attention to the information. Majestic 12 and all the UFO sightings and everything like that, all that stuff started fitting around this time. And it seems like Hitler had information prior to about these UFOs, and I believe America had as well, about technology and things that they found all around the world, basically proving that aliens was here and they left some kind of technology, or possibly was sharing technology, with our government. And I always tell people, like, pay attention to your phone. I mean, look at the technology we have and how it has increased crazy over the last few decades. I mean, the stuff, I don't take a phone for granted. I look at it, what our phones can do is amazing with the touch screen and everything like that. And the technology is out of this world for us to have this kind of technology. But, we really have so many issues in our society that clearly with this kind of technology, if we are that far ahead, we shouldn't have some of the issues that we have with cars and machines and stuff like that. But basically what they're saying is these aliens said, unless we unite, unless we deal with the issues that we have around the world, they won't reveal themselves. And they are the ones, the aliens are the ones who supposedly put the quarantine, or the so-called Van Allen radiation belts around the planet to where we can't go nowhere. This is what is believed. They call it a quarantine or what have you. And this is supposedly the reason why the New World Order is trying to form. They are basically trying to get the world under their control so that when this quarantine is lifted and when these aliens do come, they have control of the planet and whatever technology and information that they're going to reveal to us or give us, they can have sole control over it, because these people are obviously monsters and greedy. So they want to control everything to make it like, okay, yeah, we came together, we had a new world order, we're all one world, one government, whatever like that. Come give us the information, or come tell us what you want to tell us, come help us grow in consciousness or what have you, so they can have sole possession of this information for whatever reason. Now, I don't know how these powers work, these aliens work, and what they will do, or do they understand that the powers that be are corrupt, or what corruption is. Like, we don't know. You get what I'm saying? Like, if I just go because I'm hungry, because I want to feed my kids, if I just go on the street and grab some people and chop them up and kill them and eat them and feed them to my kids, the rest of society would be like, you sick, that's crazy. Yet that's what lions do. That's what animals do in the wild. We call it nature. It's supposed to be natural. It's the cycle of life, a beautiful thing and what have you. When, a cub is killed, or when an animal is killed and ripped away from its family to feed, a starving lion family. To us, it's, okay, well, it's the way it is. It's nature. We don't know if that's the same way these beings might think, that this is the way it is. The strong survive, or you got to do what you got to do. We are under this whole moral compass that we have, that this is right, this is wrong, this is morally acceptable, when we don't know the universal law and rules. And I told you that the powers that be are following some kind of law and rules. That's why when you pay attention to everything that they have done to us, it's legal. It's legal. It's not their fault that we so blinded by the entertainment that they put in front of our faces that we don't see the trap. It's not their fault. To anybody looking on the outside, oh well, it's obviously clear that this whole thing is a setup, that this whole thing is fraudulent, yet you chose to stay in it. You chose to stay an American citizen. You chose to be this way. You have not come together and came against this regime, came against the powers that be, the rulers. So this is obviously what you want. And it's basically contracted. When you pay attention to everything that they do, it's fucking legal. I'm telling you. It's so much to get into that I can't really do it. But I'm pretty sure most of you can see. It's like, why do some of the things that they do when they could just say, fuck it, we're in power. This is what it's going to be. You know, the whole thing with executive orders where the president has the power to basically make law. Forget Senate, forget Congress or what have you. And if you put the Supreme Court there personally to back you, you tell them, listen, this is what I'm going to do. This date is going to come up. I'm going to make you a Supreme Court judge. When it comes up, I don't want you to go against this law, you know, when Congress tries to fight it. And you never know. So we don't know how these beings think or what is right and wrong to them. But we obviously know the way the powers that be is going about this whole New World Order is evil and it's deceptive. And supposedly they are doing so to gain control, again, as I said, of everything. So once these beings come back, they are the ones in sole possession of this power or information. So now then you have to think about it. The Bible, Revelations and all that. This is how it's supposed to happen. Remember, I was just talking about this in the previous video, when Satan is supposed to deceive the world and everything. And remember, basically, powers that be is Satan. And you have the powers that be deceiving the nations and taking over the world. What's supposed to happen after they do basically this new world order, this one world? Then Jesus is supposed to come back. Only it's not Jesus. It's probably, you know, these so-called aliens, according to, you know, what they are saying. So, you know, when you get into this information, it's kind of on par with what the Bible is saying, if you know how to pull out the, you know, the metaphors and, you know, the parable of basically what it's talking about. So we got to look at all this stuff. We got to look at it, and you got to really judge it critically, what these people are saying and what a lot of people are alluding to. Because again, it really makes sense that they would want to hide stuff. Because if we sitting around not knowing that it's aliens and everything like that, then they can get away with what they're doing. If we find an alien message that's saying that they're coming back, then we would know they're coming back, and we won't believe the bullshit that they try to pull on us. Because if they fake some kind of invasion where you have these spaceships coming in and you have these white people looking aliens come off, talk about some they the creators and gods of the world and stuff like that, and it's all a hoax that they would use to basically control the masses of people, you know, that's something that we would know. That's something we can look at and say, well, wait a minute. We know damn well we created you. You can't get these white people without black people. So how are you the originals? And this gets into the whole Saturn thing, which we're going to get into a lot in part 2 of this. It's going to start out with a lot of Saturn information. But we got to pay attention to people like Hellier and the stuff that he's talking about, and everybody who's putting out this kind of information, because it's a lot of deception mixed with truth, and this is what they do. And you get a lot of people hyped when you start talking about spirituality and everything like that, as it pertains with extraterrestrials, because we know that this is really what it's about. It's about consciousness. You start talking about consciousness and everything like that. When you really get into it deep, everything is consciousness. And I talked about this in the last DVDs and everything, about how consciousness basically creates energy, which creates matter and everything like that. So, you know, it wouldn't be a surprise to me. And I'm me personally, I'm almost 100% sure that I know. Basically, yeah, I'm sure it's extraterrestrial life out there, and it's something going on with the powers that be in them. It could be other life out there and other civilizations out there who just are not concerned with the rest of the universe, who don't have the technology or capability to reach everybody or what have you. You know, just look at how things begin with us, and we don't know the situation. So we really got to pay attention to what they're talking about and everything that they put out, because we know that they are simply trying to deceive the masses, and that's the plan. And this whole New World Order agenda is the end game. And whatever happens after that, I don't think it's going to be good for us. But, a lot of people was saying that Dmitry Medvedev, I think it was his last name, was trying to get Obama to reveal about the extraterrestrials. And to people was saying, well, wait a minute. The Russians knew about UFOs, obviously, before Obama. Why wait till Obama is in office to say something about extraterrestrials? And a lot of people say, well, because the extraterrestrials are black. That it's these black beings from Saturn, which is why Russia was saying, tell them about these are the dudes who basically really are in opposition to the powers that be. And they are basically, it's going to be some kind of competition supposedly between the powers that be and supposedly these black extraterrestrials who I believe were the ancient Egyptians, the people who actually built the pyramids, the giants, whatever you want to call them. I believe it's them. I believe they reside on Saturn. I believe it's something that's going on that pertains to them and what's going on with this planet. Because you then also have to think, who are these four species? What are they? You would think if they are on this planet, then they're in some kind of position of power. But if they are in a position of power, then they are under the powers that be. So who are they? What are they doing here? What's the point? What is the purpose? Are they stuck here? Can they not leave? And I told you before, when you see those videos with the supposed UFOs, the orbs of light, those are the ones who have to be the most powerful, or they could be the ones who are here and who just know how to leave their, whatever body that they in and become a light being and leave the planet or what have you. Any being that comes here in any kind of spaceship or spacecraft is not all powerful. They are not God. They are not the ones who created us. Whoever created us, really created us, is somebody who can control that energy, who can direct it or what have you, who can control consciousness. This body that we have obviously was made up of animals. And that's how I see it. When you look at, the DNA that we share with all these different animals, this body was engineered and put together, and our consciousness was put inside of it somehow, some way. It's just that simple. We can get really deep into this and just take it back to one. And if you really want to look at it, let's just say it's only me, nobody else. So me, or let's say woman, a female, having the power to reproduce on her own. When she reproduces on her own, she passes a piece of her energy along to the reproduction. And then her energy is within the reproduction or the child. So that happens, so on and so forth, time after time after time. But really, that energy is going back to one source, the original. So then once man comes on the scene, and his energy is a little bit different, and he mixes with woman, and their energies together creates a baby with both of their energies, in that child. But really, it's still going back to the one source, the energy. And then, so on and so forth, child after child after child, species, race, or what have you is created. But really, it's all one energy. What is that energy? What is the source of that energy? And that's something we got to look at. I don't think, and this is what so many philosophers have talked about how we are all basically experiencing the same consciousness, but as different, or the same, the same consciousness, the same everything, but it's different, just in different ways. Because obviously you can't experience life the way I'm experiencing life, so your experience will be different from mine, but we're basically the same. energy, the same being, except for your experience is different, if you understand what I'm saying. So we are just all the same energy experiencing existence differently. You know what I'm saying? So this is what a lot of philosophers always talk about. And it's something you really got to think about, that if we are all just one, and we all go back to one source, you know, what is that source and what created it? Does it all go back to the original consciousness that, you know, became aware of itself and decided to move and then create math and create matter and everything and so on and so forth? And what happened that it got separated so much and that we got put in these bodies? You know, it's a story there, and it's deep, and it's something that we really got to look into, and that I've been really digging into. And what I just told you was like really at the heart of my research, what I really dig into, because consciousness, the way when you really get into it, I know it can't really be a bunch of them. Possibly, maybe in different dimensions, possibly. But that's something else to look at too. That's like further way down the rabbit hole. So these are things that I'm going to really be getting into a lot more and a lot more deeply for those who are interested in a lot of my DVDs to come, because it gets really deep from here on out. I put out so much information so far, and you know, it's tough to not take y'all into my world, because then it's like I can't expect y'all to understand how I think and the kooky shit that I come up with, the crazy ways I think. So I try to take that and put it the best way I can into a way that I can convey it to you for you guys to understand. And I try to just go back through history and go back through books and research to try to find things that fit with what I'm trying to convey with the research and everything like that. So this all fits, it all goes, and it's a lot deeper. Now it's weird that it has been so many movies like Sphere and other movies that basically alluded to that fact that mankind is not ready for extraterrestrial help. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, we are not prepared to handle that power, you know, that kind of knowledge. We're not ready for it as a people, as a you know, a planet, because of what we see and what's going on. And it's almost as if the powers that be continue to spread fear and spread panic and hate to make the planet look more unstable and look like it needs to get its stuff together, until they're going to keep doing it until they can get in position to bring it under their umbrella of one world. So they're basically going to keep portraying to these extraterrestrial entities that the world is not ready. Look at racism, and look at we still going to war with each other. Because if tomorrow we decided on our own to just come together as a planet, we just come together and everybody just put down the guns and we just unite as the human race, not under the control of no government, just on our own, you know, then supposedly these extraterrestrial beings that are here walking amongst us or what have you will say, well, the world did it on its own, they came together, they're ready to accept our information and knowledge, and let's give it to them and let's show them what this existence is really about. Then that would take the control away from the powers that be. So it seems like they want to inject fear more, and you make the world look more distorted and messed up to keep them away from, or to keep them from even thinking about intervening into what's going on. When you think about something like racism, if we are this against each other, when the only difference, clearly, color of skin, eyes, and hair, we obviously look exactly alike besides those things. If we can't come together because of those things, then how can we, you know, deal with an extraterrestrial entity? I would be afraid too, as an extraterrestrial, to come here and deal with this species on planet Earth who feel this way about their own brothers and sisters. So if you on the outside paying attention to the world, and you see how we are and how things are, then of course you would hold back into coming here and revealing yourself. But to me, While, because I think real critically and how I look at it is, what if I'm one of those extraterrestrials? What if I'm one of those? Then I can clearly see the deception that the powers that be has over the planet. So I would know if you're here and you're watching what's going on, then clearly as a intelligent entity, you can see clearly that all this stuff is driven by one. It's driven by that 1%. It's driven by these powers that be. Now, again, maybe to them, it could be to them that that's not a problem. To them, it could be, well, why is it that we are allowing it? Everything that they seem to do, the powers that be, seem to be legit, seems to be on paper. We are not paying attention to it. We choose to instead be, distracted by entertainment, by violence, by hatred, by stupid shit that don't matter, than to stop and pay attention to what the powers that be are doing. Maybe to them, that family, the powers that be, these people that's running everything, are correct, are right. They believe in them because they seem to be the ones who have everything going right, and we are the stupid ones who need to be controlled because we can't handle real information. We can't handle anything, and we need to be controlled, and they are right for controlling us. Because when you look at it from the outside, and you look at it just like that, like just as I just explained it, I mean, that's exactly how it seems. And we can't sit here and say, well, we don't know, or we didn't know, and how could we know, or we've been tricked and we've been deceived. But I think everybody in America, especially, has that notion in the back of their head that this is all a setup, it's all a trick, a trap. We being bamboozled, the government is crooked, something is going on. I think everybody has that, but we don't follow it. We don't choose to follow it. We instead choose to just go with the flow. Don't ask questions. If it's not happening to me, I don't care. So one way or another, it's all going to come out. The agenda is going to reveal itself and become even more clear, especially to people who do this kind of research, who really dig into things. It's going to be a lot more clear. We're going to see a lot more, or understand a lot more of what they're trying to do, in the future. So, this is part 1, and I really wanted to get into this. We're going to get into Saturn a lot more in part 2, but wanted to set the stage for this series with this information, which we're going to refer to later on because it's a lot more to it. But it's part 1. I want to thank you guys for taking the time to watch it, for purchasing, the DVD and everything. I appreciate the support as always. A lot more to come. And I'll see you guys next video.